Welcome back for our fourth and final installment of this very important, very timely, very special conversation with Trevor Loudon, one of America's foremost experts on the Chinese Communist Party and other Marxist and socialist and democratic socialist and totalitarian enterprises that are operating inside the United States. And Trevor, thank you again so much for giving us your time today to address this at a moment when, as you've just described, we are, in the midst of the installation of not one but two people with extensive ties, it seems, to Communist Party operations in the United States as the president and vice president, respectively, of our country. I wanted to ask you about, just very quickly, how not only the penetration of our political class by the Chinese Communist Party, but of other institutions or industries in our country, including our media, academia, big tech, other major industrial operations or businesses like Walmart, for example, and the cumulative effect of such, deep penetration, for want of a better term, must be for a country like ours at a time such as this.
Well, back in 2009, the Canadian Intelligence Service, their SIS, released a report saying the Chinese had used their business connections to basically not influence but control the state governments of both British Columbia and Alberta in Canada, Canada's two richest provinces. So that was 10 years ago. They have used their influence in our business communities right up to the big tech titans to be able to project their party line right across America. They've compromised large businesses like Walmart, etc., who have huge influence in our economy. They've bought up large amounts of infrastructure, a lot of agricultural land, etc. And all this is used as leverage on our politicians, on our state governments. Many Republican governors have extensive business dealings with the Chinese communists, as does the family of Mitch McConnell, the head of the Republican Senate. So they can pretty much dictate what the American government does, what American state governments do, and they can use their big tech influence to shut down any exposure of this. Yes. In fact, we saw this with Hunter Biden. The massive corruption around Hunter Biden, most voters still don't know about it because the media had the power to shut it down.
Yeah, and took full advantage of it in the critical run-up to this election. And interestingly enough, I think it was the Media Research Center that did a survey, Trevor, of the number of Democratic voters who said that they would not have voted for Joe Biden had they known about that compromise. It's deeply, deeply troubling against the backdrop that we've been discussing particularly. Trevor, this leads me to a point that I know you have spent considerable time on, and that is Chinese involvement in the election. We had John Ratcliffe, who you mentioned earlier, the Director of National Intelligence, now outgoing, say that the intelligence community analysts who were assessing the degree of Chinese penetration in and influence on the 2020 presidential race was wrong. I mean, fundamentally in error. He used more colorful terms than that, but that was the gist of it. So in addition to warning about the corruption and penetration of our political class, he talked about them being able to have an influence on who actually gets elected to office. In this case, the defeat of Donald Trump, who they detested, the Chinese Communist Party, and the election of a guy who, as you say, has been deeply compromised by them. Give us a flavor of what that involvement looked like, Trevor, and how it could well have been material in the outcome of the 2020 race.
Well, there's many aspects to this, but the overlooked aspect is the Chinese involvement in mass voter registration organizations in key swing states. Now, this was orchestrated by Chinese Progressive Association, again in San Francisco, who the same people who set up, guided Black Lives Matter, set up a voter registration group, Seed the Vote, SEED, Seed the Vote. And this worked with the network of Liberation Road pro-Chinese communist voter registration organizations that have been operating for some time in America. Like, for instance, in Virginia, New Virginia Majority, run by Liberation Road, claims open credit for flipping that state from Republican to Democrat. And they use maps, very sophisticated computerized maps, GIS mapping, generated by one of their comrades who has worked for the last 10 years out of the geography department of Wuhan University, China. So they're using Chinese material to flip districts.
And when you say maps, you're talking not just about, the geographic maps, you're talking about the demographic maps, which enable them to do very precise targeting of those they were seeking to recruit. And my assumption, Trevor, I defer to you on this, is that they weren't just looking to get voters in who they think would vote the way they wanted, but they were looking also, presumably, to see people that might be recruited for other purposes as well. These would be dual use investments, would they not?
Yeah, this is to build their movement. And because of this network, North Carolina now has a Democratic governor. Kentucky has a Democratic governor. Texas, through the Texas Organizing Project, almost went blue when Ted Cruz, had a race against Beto O'Rourke. O'Rourke lost by 2.5% when it should have been 15%, because of the on-the-ground work these Chinese networks had done amongst minority populations. They had big networks in San Francisco, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, all of the key swing states. And Seed the Vote claims that of the 7 key states they targeted, they won 6 of them for Biden. All of the key states that allegedly turned the election for Biden,
the contested states,
by those pro-Chinese networks.
Yeah. Trevor, this is such important research, and I hope that now that Donald Trump is out of office, it will be possible for it and the other abundant evidence of what I call the electoral grand larceny in this presidential election will be finally possible to be examined publicly and evaluated for the compelling evidence that it actually is. Trevor, we always run out of time before we run out of things to talk with you about, but let me turn to one last topic. You mentioned just now the racial minorities that the Chinese Communist Party's United Front groups like Seed the Vote are targeting for, yes, registration to vote, but also for recruitment for their movement and who knows what else, given the Chinese Communist Party's agenda of destroying our country. One element of the Chinese, Maoist doctrine and campaign against America, of course, is promoting this idea that we are a racist nation. And I'd like to just quickly close out by talking a bit about, what the impact of that false narrative is, one, and two, the extent to which the Chinese Communist Party itself, or China, under the Han supremacist regime of Xi Jinping, is actually the world's most racist nation by far.
Yeah, look. If anybody, if the Chinese Communist Party mimics any organization, it is the Nazi Party of Adolf Hitler. They are very much into Han racial supremacy. They suppress any ethnic group within their territory. They try and, indoctrinate. You can see what they've done to the Tibetan people with the
Yes,
Uyghurs
yes.
in Western China. They will suppress
Genocide.
any, but the hypocrisy is the main weapon they use in Western countries, particularly in the United States, is to fan the flames of racism.
Right.
The
And divisiveness, and ultimately the undermining of our sense of nationhood. And Donald Trump spoke very powerfully about that loss of confidence in who we are and our exceptionalism in his farewell address to the nation yesterday. Trevor, we have to say farewell to you. Thank you for your time today, for your great expertise, and for sharing it so generously with us today. We'll look forward to continuing this conversation with you in the near future on more programs of Secure Freedom Radio. Thanks to all of you for listening. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow for more. Till then, this is Frank Gaffney. Over and out.